I'm Neil Patterson, and I'm the principal at Silverstone UTC.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to different people within this industry, and you have several, I suppose, differing opinions and experiences. But your current role is principal at UTC. Now, just explain to people who might not know, what is UTC and why should we be interested?
Okay, well, UTCs are university technical colleges. There's 48 of them around the UK, and we all have different purposes. Essentially, we're just secondary schools who usually start with students a bit older, so year 10 or age 14 and up, and we have a sixth form as well. And the technical bit is the key, really. We all generally have specialisms in technical subjects, depending on the needs of the region. So if you were to go to Plymouth, for example, you'd find some marine engineering specialisms. If you were to go to Reading, it would be all about computing and cyber security and that kind of stuff. Come to Silverstone, guess what? It's all about high performance engineering and technology.
Fabulous. And that is why we've got you onto the programme, to talk about what is a very specialist subject, but especially going into the half-term break and the season up till Christmas. I think it is a time when students sometimes are a little bit lost, a little bit scared, a little bit uncomfortable. So I thought, let's get you on and have a chat and try and help people who are maybe sitting at a technical college or university thinking, okay, what do I do next? So as a principal, how difficult have the last few months been?
It's been unusual, that's for sure. And the first few weeks seem to be dealing with trying to get everybody up to speed with what the rules were with regard to whether or not it's safe to come to school or be in school, all the new rules about social distancing in school and trying to isolate, cleaning regimes and all that kind of stuff. So that took up quite a bit of time. And of course, at the same time, we're coping with students who haven't been in school for 6 months and have got out of that routine. And so establishing that routine again for them has been quite time consuming. But most of the students are pretty much there now, I think.
I suppose challenge-wise going forward, you've got people who are applying to university. Presumably, it's quite difficult to know what is happening with exams as well. So have you found that it's been unsettling for some of the students?
Yeah, it has been. I think we're probably dealing with more pastoral care issues this term than we would normally. But we're trying and smooth the waters for them and make things as normal as possible. And that whole process of going through UCAS applications for university or trying to find apprenticeships is something that we're just trying to navigate for them. One difficulty, though, particularly, I think, is that there are fewer apprenticeships that kind of making themselves obvious to us as a school and to our students at the moment, and that's a direct result of the coronavirus.
And that must be frustrating, because we talk about a hands-on approach rather than, having to sit through lots of exams. But actually, if you want that hands-on experience, it's very difficult because presumably places have just closed down to a certain extent.
A lot of companies obviously have had reduced output, and so they're struggling financially and not necessarily in a position to take on new people on apprenticeships when they've had to lay people off. And coupled with that, the prospect of bringing people in for work experience and that kind of thing at a time where you've got risk assessments in place to minimise the risk of transmission of coronavirus, it's obviously a problem that can easily be avoided for employers.
How did you get started on your path? Because you've not always been the principal at Silverstone.
No, I had a really, really weird journey into employment through education and all the rest of that. So when I was at school, I wanted to teach modern languages, and I love French and German. And so I started studying A-levels in French, German and maths, which is a bit of an odd combination in itself. And unfortunately, I then discovered that to get an A-level in French and German, I had to write critical essays about books written hundreds of years ago in a different language, and it didn't work out for me. So,
we've all been there.
Yeah. So anyway, I chose to leave school before my first year of sixth form was completed, and I got a job in a drawing office of a local engineering firm. because I quite liked maths and science and physics, and I was quite good at technical drawing as well. I did that at O level, way back when O levels were in place before GCSEs. So I did that, and then I started going to college, day release, and did an ONC, then an HNC. Got a job in a drawing office working for a local car company, consultancy down in West Sussex, and then ended up working at McLaren just around 1999 or something. Worked at McLaren for nearly 14 years, and I was chief engineer on road car programs with them. Worked on the 12C and subsequent vehicles. And then about 8 years ago, I had a call from a recruitment consultant asking me if I was interested in perhaps being the principal of a brand new college opening at Silverstone. And I was kind of quickly, while on the phone, quickly onto LinkedIn to try and find out if there was a different Neil Patterson who knew anything about education whatsoever. And it turned out there wasn't one, and they did want to talk to me. And they wanted somebody outside of education who had links into the industry, who understood the needs of businesses in the high-performance technology sector, and could perhaps represent the aspirations of the students who might come and study here. So I was absolutely delighted when they offered me the job, and quite surprised.
It's certainly not your traditional route in, but do you think there is such a thing as a traditional route in at the moment? Do you have to be a little bit different, or I hate to say the cliche of think outside the box, but there are so few great positions around at the moment, it feels.
Yeah, possibly. And I think, lots and lots of people think that their only route into high performance engineering technology companies, and certainly through into Formula One, is through a university degree. And I think it's true to say actually that apprenticeships are on the rise, notwithstanding the slight hiatus caused by coronavirus. Apprenticeships on the rise, degree apprenticeships are rising, and opportunities for people to get in through apprenticeships really should be considered seriously. And if you're really good, then you will be noticed by these companies, and they will promote you within, and you will go far, and you will do well.
At the moment, and what's it looking like with regards to numbers of people wanting to come and study with you?
It's looking really good. So we had a slightly fewer students join us this September, and that's because quite a few parents are a bit concerned about sending their students on buses to come to us at the moment. And that's because we have students who join us from a very large catchment area. So generally, the average distance from schools is about 13 miles, but we have to go out to about 25, 30 miles to get to the lion's share of our student body. But we do have students coming from even further than that. In fact, last year we had 2 students from Norway. So just to give you an idea of the breadth of area that we take people from.
And do you need to have decided what you want to do to come to study with you, or how focused do you need to be?
I think nearly all students who come to join us, certainly in sixth form age 16, but the large majority of those who join us age 14 are really clear that they want to work in motorsport or engineering or events management or other allied industries. And that's, if you think about where we are, everyone's got an aunt and uncle or a mum or a dad or a close family friend who works in the business anyway, whether that's in the supply chain or directly for some of the race teams or whatever it might be. And they're clear, and they've had that desire and that passion for a long time.
So do you find that the names of the pupils coming in are sometimes slightly familiar to you?
There's one or two. Yeah, there's one or two. We've had one or two people through who would be familiar in the Formula One world as well, and we get a large number of people who come in who have race careers already, either in karting or brick car or British GT, that kind of stuff. So people are interested in motorsport, be it as a driver or wanting to get in onto the technology side of things.
And how hard is it to get in to your college? I mean, what do people have to do?
It's not difficult at all. We're a state-funded school, so we have to abide by the normal rules for state-funded schools, which is simply, if you apply and we have a place, we give it to you.
What about the rest of the curriculum, the rest of your education, and how do you tailor it to somebody that does want to go forward and have a career in engineering or mechanics?
Yeah, so when students join us age 14, they will study some engineering, and they will also study all the other subjects that they might normally study. Now, in order to develop a kind of a solid foundation for a career of their choosing, be that in motorsport or in business or whatever it might be, we have to limit the options that are available. So we're only about 500 students, so we can't offer every single option to every single student. So there's less focus on the arts and the humanities here, and more focus on the science and the engineering and the maths. But that's okay. I mean, arts and humanities are really important, and we all enjoy them. But in terms of trying to get qualifications, it's a decision to base your set of qualifications around an intended career. And so it's right for some students to choose something based around that. So they'll do maths, they'll do geography if they want to, they'll do German if they want to, and we do sport and other subjects as well. But there's a focus around what's needed for their career. And then when we come to sixth form, it's a bit more specialised in the same way as it would be normally. You can do a pure A-level route, which might be focused around maths and physics, for example, or you might do a purely engineering route, which might set you up for an apprenticeship very well. It might be equivalent to 3 A-levels in engineering, or it might be a combination of A-levels and engineering or business studies and things alongside it.
And when it comes, I mean, obviously, you're at Silverstone, you're in the heart of this huge technical and mechanical revolution, I suppose. It's like being in Silicon Valley for many people if you wanted to go into anything tech. So how do you join forces with the companies around you, which are many, not just the F1 teams, to make sure that you give people the best chance of success?
We've got lots of connections with lots of companies around, and we talk to them all the time. We talk to them about what they're looking for, and we tailor some of our studies in sixth form to try and give them what they're needing. So we were talking to one company the other day about how we might be able to offer something related to composites, and another company how we might be able to offer something related to control systems and computing, that kind of stuff, to try and give those companies what they need. Because ultimately, while obviously we want our students to get a whole load of great qualifications, we're not actually here to serve the students. We're here to serve the region's employers. And in doing so, we serve the students because we set them up well to go and work for them.
How influential, Neil, do you think people like Lando, George and Lewis Hamilton are to pulling people into courses like your own?
I think everyone really looks up to Formula One drivers, especially young Formula One drivers, and that generates a lot of interest, doesn't it? And when you've got people like the younger ones like Lando and George, they're just great characters, aren't they? And everyone wants to be them. And so, yeah, it's got to have a great effect. What I'd like to see, though, is how about some women in F1? That'd be great, wouldn't it? To get some more female drivers through the ranks.
Is there any moments of Formula One that have stood out to you as special over the last decade?
Probably so. I remember going back a little bit further than that. I remember being at lunch at McLaren once in the restaurant, and Martin Whitmarsh was there, sat with this young lad in a race suit, and everyone was going, "Who's that? Who's that?" And it was the young Lewis Hamilton. And it was really, really interesting to watch how he went from a protege within that organisation on to being given a go. Racing at circuits that he'd learned on his PlayStation or something like that. And to see him move into Formula One and then since then go on to much bigger and greater things with the Mercedes team, I think has been fantastic. And it's been really lovely to see how he's actually developed in maturity and is now an inspiration to some of the younger drivers coming through as well. It's been great.
Neil, do you see the effect of Lewis Hamilton, now multiple world champion, looking to equal Schumacher's record of 7 titles? Do you see the influence he has on your students?
Yeah, I think so. But interestingly, they seem to be more influenced by the even younger drivers now. So he's moved, from being a young driver. In my mind, he's now moving into being one of the older drivers in the minds of my younger people.
Don't listen, Lewis. But when we spoke a little bit about diversity before we heard from George Russell, what do you see? I mean, you're looking at the next generation of professionals coming into motorsport. Is it changing? Is the landscape becoming more diverse?
I think it is. I think it is actually, and I think it's an encouragement. Our first ever student who got an apprenticeship in Formula One was a young woman, and we were really proud of her for getting that opportunity. We got her some work experience with Mercedes, and she absolutely knocked our socks off. And when it came to an apprenticeship, they were on the phone to say, we would encourage her to apply. And now she's full-time employed by them, and doing fantastically. So I think on the gender divide within the sport, things are improving quite slowly, I would say, but they're improving. And then I think if we look at the ethnicity side of things as well, I think that's improving. We've certainly seen an increase in ethnicity and diversity in ethnicity within the school, and the local area, South Northamptonshire, is about 3% non-white, whereas our student cohort's about 16-17% non-white. So it's much more ethnically diverse than the region would suggest. And I'm certainly seeing more people interested in taking their rightful place within that. I think what Lewis has done, and the rest of the drivers are doing with their kind of show of solidarity at the start of the races, which had a bit of a shaky start, didn't it? But got better. I think that's great. I think that's great for the sport. And it's been really interesting talking to people about how the Hamilton Commission can help improve that even further. And we've been talking to people in Formula One as well about how we can work with them to try and improve diversity and inclusion within the sport. So that's great.
It's funny because a lot of the time people say, well, surely it should just be the best person for the job. It doesn't matter who it is. I mean, how do you think F1 balances that up? I know we've gone off into sort of quite a deep subject, but how does F1 balance getting the best person for the job, but also greater diversity?
I think they need to look at where they're going to look for the best person, and that's the key thing. We know, for example, that far fewer girls study physics at A level than boys, having taken it at GCSE, and yet part of the entry requirement for an engineering degree at university is to have a physics A level. So the entry requirements for universities are automatically preventing lots of girls from taking up that opportunity. So I think we need to look at that. There are different ways of finding aptitude for an engineering degree than a physics A level. Secondly, if you look at the universities that Formula One companies go to, generally they'll go to the higher tariff universities and pick the best of the best. And they are less ethnically diverse than a lot of the other universities. So it's about casting the net wider and looking further. And I think it's also about providing opportunities for younger people sooner and trying to identify young talent as early as possible from across the range. And by coming in and looking at the students that you have in a UTC, for example, you can find some absolutely cracking opportunities to employ the best of the best for the future.
And just finally, because we are running out of time, as ever, how big a thing is it that there is a UTC at Silverstone, and that you can look out the door on a normal given day and see some of the best cars, you know, in the country, in the world, whizzing round at up to 200 miles an hour?
Well, I think it's incredibly inspirational for anybody coming through the doors and through the security gates every morning because we are inside the pay line at the circuit. We're literally less than 30 metres from the national pit straight. So that's really impressive, and I think it really, I think it speaks a lot about the intention of the sponsors of the organisation, which is the Bedford College Group, the University of Northampton, and Silverstone circuits themselves. They saw it as really, really important, so much so they tore down a grandstand and built a college in its place. So it's really intentional. We've got some tentative plans that I can't really talk about to expand the education provision here on site as well, to make it even more at higher levels and with a slightly wider range of courses as well. It's really important for the circuit, it's really important for the industry, the region, and it feels really great to be part of it in this area.
Neil, I'm sure if people want to find out all about you guys, they can, because of the wonders of the internet. But if you want to point people in the right direction in case they're interested in maybe studying, or they know someone who would, how is it best to find out information?
Well, go to silverstoneutc.com or utc-silverstone.co.uk. Check us out on Twitter at Silverstone UTC, and all the other socials, we're there.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. We wish you the best of luck with the rest of this year and the academic year as well, with whatever it may bring. Just one final thought, your favourite day of your sort of motorsport journey, whether that be at the university or whether that be before then, wherever it may be on your journey, what was your favourite day?
Oh, tough one. I think it was when we placed our first student in a Formula One team. That was the proud dad moment for me. And and what's great is we've done it every single year since then. We've sent students into Formula One teams, and that's definitely the best day of the year when you hear about those.
I love it. Neil, thank you so much, and I'm sure our paths will cross again. But from everybody here at the Silverstone podcast, thank you very much.
Thank you.